Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. I decided to use my lunch break to update you about everything that happened in World Cup qualifying, not only in Europe, although this will be the focus of the first part of this episode, but also around the world with another emphasis on Africa, although we have two more qualified. From Asia as well, the two that you would expect, but we have plenty of new teams qualified from Africa. I think a total of 5 teams have now qualified from Africa. We know 9 qualified teams from Africa now, and potentially there is a 10th one coming through the playoffs. And speaking of Africa, this was the surprise that I saw. I mean, I kind of expected it to happen, but it was never publicly announced, and this was how the playoff participants will be decided. In the end, there was a meeting in March that says, okay, the last place teams, because we had one group of 5, because Eritrea withdrew. So with one group of 5 and with all the other groups with 6 teams. And then they decided in March, without announcing it, that the games against the 6th place teams will be discarded. And suddenly Nigeria had an opening and took advantage of that one. To me, almost the biggest story. I know Cape Verde should be the biggest story, but for me, Nigeria still having a chance and now actually looking decent shape of reaching the World Cup, although through a gauntlet you have to potentially win. You have to win 2 games in Africa to do that. Not that easy. And then at least 1 game in the Intercontinental Playoff, depending on the seeding. And I think that Nigeria is probably one of the seeded teams. So 3 more games and Nigeria still could make it to the World Cup when it looked like they're all out and done. We also had in Europe, Portugal being denied in the last minute, qualifying directly. So we've only 1 team from Europe qualifying so far, and that is England, a team that of course started already in March to play qualification rounds, and so maybe didn't come as much of a surprise that England qualified. However, they did it in very emphatic fashion in a group that, when you just look at it, this was not an easy one, but Serbia is not the Serbia, and Stojkovic now stepping down after the big defeat to Albania, I think tells also a story of how this maybe on paper kind of tricky group was not that tricky at all. But before we go into that, there's another more general theme that I want to talk about, and maybe this one has some justification. And it's that UEFA have realized, their qualifying process is maybe not as exciting. Maybe for World Cup, it's actually all right, because now it's very shortened, and I actually did like that. But, many groups, pretty much all the groups, we know already who will most likely get out of that one. There are only just a few that are a little bit on the knife's edge, but all the big nations are waltzing through the groups, even with B teams. I mean, just look at Spain, another group that looked tricky at the beginning, but Spain is waltzing through it. So doesn't make it all that exciting. So we need to a little bit adjust the qualification routine. And I can understand that, to be honest. Now, I'm not quite in agreement of what they're planning. They're planning kind of like the Champions League, a Swiss system for qualification. But if I'm honest, I think there should be a better way to do that. And what I would suggest is, make the Nations League even bigger. Give places at big tournaments through the Nations League. So all the League A nations are already qualified by being in there. Maybe the ones that get relegated, they might have to go into a playoff or are not in. It's something that works in ice hockey very, very, very well. That you always have the big nations there, but you always have the little surprises in there. And there is a little bit of a meritocracy in there as well, because you have to play yourself into League A. And I think that would work well. And I think for UEFA, it would also work well, as a global power game, to always have your best teams in there. I mean, yes, it's a big story, and I'm not saying that Italy at the moment is a huge team, but Italy is definitely among the 16 best teams in Europe. That Italy is probably again missing out because of a playoff system that opens up randomness. That is not good, because you want your best teams there performing well at the World Cup, and then you have an argument, for instance, at FIFA when new spots for a World Cup are given out, and yes, it will always be disproportionately against UEFA, and that is good like that. I also have to say we don't need many more European teams, but if European teams are performing well, this actually is good for UEFA in their battle for FIFA allocation and so on and so forth. And I think it's an absolute disaster that potentially for a third time in a row, Italy will not be there. And Italy, again, is the one nation that is really not profiting here because all the other nations don't do it easy. And yes, I fully agree. If Italy do not qualify, it's only because of themselves. I mean, they have to get their SHIT together. But I still feel that an Italy team at a World Cup is better than, let's say, if Slovakia is there. And this is no diss against Slovakia. I just picked out one nation that has actually beaten Italy at the World Cup, but one nation that will not get as many eyeballs onto the World Cup. Just saying, yeah? So I think going with the Nations League would be good. And I think the way you could do it is, at the moment we have, for instance, in the Nations League A, we have 4 groups of 4. Make it 2 groups of 8. And then the top 7 qualify already. The rest go into playoff. Then throw in from League B, League C, if however you like. And I think you have something going for you. Or do it in League A, B, C, D with your Swiss league system. But again, this is very then dependent on how it is all drawn out. So not ideal, and again would open up a little bit more randomness. But that's my way of thinking. I've always said the Nations League is one of the best ideas that UEFA have come up with in the last couple of years. Getting rid of all the friendlies, that was a great idea. And I saw always the potential there that actually, and just remember the March window, how great those quarterfinals were. So I always said that the Nations League has really the potential to become a stand-in European Championship already. And then if you pull it up and market it properly, I really think this is the way to sort qualification. Am I the only one thinking this way? Probably at the moment I am, because we won't have everything separated. I personally think this would be probably the best way to go about. And yes, I also think we should have Nations Leagues in other confederations. I mean, we have it in CONCACAF. I think one in Africa, I would think would work wonders there as well. I mean, the African continent, I have to say, is very level, but lifting a little bit the level there would work really, really well. So those are my thoughts on qualifying. Let's go into European qualifying, and I again want to go group by group. And again, I will do this now mostly from memory, but I will always look up a little bit as well. So, but mostly it is from memory, and we'll go through the main storylines. Group A, that's the major storyline. Slovakia got a win over Luxembourg. However, Germany had to go to Northern Ireland and had a really hard time. They win 1-0 thanks to Voltemar, the goal. However, they could have been well 1-0 down. That was then scraped off, I think, for a foul in the build-up or something like that. So they were already 1-0 down. Same time, and we'll talk about that Wales went up against Belgium. So I thought, is there something happening on the British Isles? No, there was nothing happening on the British Isles because Germany got the job done, but they had to really, really sweat for it. But now Germany are level on points with Slovakia, and note that Slovakia will need to finish in second place to at least guarantee a playoff spot. They do not have the backdoor through the Nations League, so that might also come into play. Have that in mind when you talk in a bit about the playoff picture. Switzerland probably could already have more or less, I mean, they're more or less qualified, but could have really put down a marker. But they only managed a 0-0 draw against Slovenia, a rather dreary game. But the story is Kosovo going to Sweden, beating them 1-0, and at halftime it could have been 2 or 3. And here was me saying, oh no, Sweden, Kosovo is not gonna win at Sweden. Oh, was I wrong? Sweden is in absolute trouble at the moment. I mean, Jon Dahl Tomasson is not working out. I think it's a Danish conspiracy. Because Denmark themselves are doing really well. They beat Greece, and really first half they got the job done very, very quickly. On the other side, Greece then pulled one back, and there were the chances for Greece to get back into the game. And now with this loss, this means that Greece are out of World Cup qualifying altogether. It also means that Denmark and Scotland have already secured at least a playoff spot. Scotland, though, rumbling and grumbling, 2-1 win over Belarus. Yes, they had a 2-0 lead, but in the end, did not really work out as one would have wished for Scotland, but Scotland still have a chance. I mean, beat Denmark at home and you are probably safe. A draw will not be enough. But going back to the Denmark conspiracy, because what do the Danes like best? No, they like that their national team is performing well, but they like it even more when Sweden is badly. And then having Danish striker Jon Dahl Tomasson taking over at Sweden and Sweden being absolute crap, I think Danish fans must be very, very happy at this very moment. Let's go over to Group D. France had actually a rather tough result in Iceland. They were 1-0 down, turned it around, but then still conceded an equalizer. Yes, they could not have qualified thanks to Ukraine beating Azerbaijan. And I have not mentioned, but Ukraine had a pretty good international break. I mean, they got 2 wins, the 5-3 at Iceland, and now a 2-1 over Azerbaijan. I think it's a pretty good window. So Ukraine are also in the running for the playoff spot ahead of Iceland. And I think looking good overall. We got to see how the next games pan out. In Group E, Spain, another easy 4-0 win over Bulgaria. Turkey also get the job done over Georgia with a 4-1 win. I mean, Spain still have yet to concede a goal. If they play a draw against Turkey at home, and you would expect that they are through. It's just that Turkey are clearly the second best team in this group, but there's a gulf between these. I mean, this group, I was really excited about Turkey, Georgia, and Bulgaria all playing against each other. I knew that Spain will romp through this group, but Bulgaria, unfortunately, is not competitive at all. Georgia is clearly below Turkey, and so this is a clear 1, 2, 3, 4, and so, yeah, this makes this group not that exciting. Portugal, on the other hand, hui! This is a team that I really think could do some damage next year. But it's Roberto Martinez, who also didn't do much damage with the Belgian national team. We have to be as honest about that as well. But I gotta say, this Portugal team should be loaded. But they already were rumbling to the 1-0 over Ireland. And now, yes, they controlled more against Hungary, but a Salah goal already saw them 1-0 down. Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo with 2 goals and pretty much the same goal. It just came one from the left, one from the right side. A tap in with his foot. Turned the game around before halftime. There was also an absolute ridiculous scene where Cristiano and I think it was Nuno Mendes were standing there for a free kick, where I guess the idea was that Nuno Mendes taps it on and then Cristiano shoots. However, then he taps it on and Cristiano is not moving. I mean, I don't know. There was clearly some miscommunication, but it was absolutely hilarious stuff because you could see how Nuno Mendes said, I think I messed that one up, or maybe he was about to put it back. Whatever it was, it showed that this Portugal team is not really gelling as well. However, it really looked like that Portugal might hang on. I think they hit once more the crossbar, but Hungary did as well. They were pressing for the 3rd goal, and of course Cristiano wanted to have the 3rd goal. I mean, a hat-trick, and now he is, I heard one of the least sensible statistics, the top scorer in World Cup qualifying, in European World Cup qualifying. There have been so many games. I mean, now it's a little bit reduced, which I think is good that we have these small groups. But yeah, it's a record that he's for sure going to put on his chimney or whatever. A ridiculous record. But, you know, I give it to him. As a 40-year-old, just like Luka Modric, he's still scoring goals in qualifying, and he actually did help Portugal here. So while I have been critical of Cristiano, I think it all works out. That Portugal then do not manage the next goal and seal the game, that's something that you have to worry about. And yes, I think Diogo Jota has probably also a little bit to do in there. This is a side that is probably also shaken by that experience. With no doubt about that. But then it's the last minute and you give up a counter-attack and it's a ball across the box that no one really can pick up. And then, you know, Diogo Costa in goal. The first goal is clearly on him and also on, you know, Salah. I think Bernardo Silva was marking him. That also didn't make sense. So the 2 goals that they conceded were absolutely stupid. And Szoboszlai, you could see he wasn't even thinking that they might get the ball to him. But then he sees the ball come in and suddenly, yes, I might get this one. And he gets the equalizer. Keeps Hungary just about in the running. I mean, Hungary really would have needed the win there. But it keeps Hungary just about in the running. But Hungary is most likely a playoff team. How likely they will make it through the playoffs, that remains to be seen. Let's go to the bigger groups. The Dutch got an easy 4-0 home win over Finland. Really very, very easy. The goal scorers Vermaelen, Van Dijk, I think, with his head, then Memphis penalty, and of course Gakpo adding a fourth one. The Dutch looking relatively comfortable in the group now, 3 points ahead of Poland, better goal difference. I think unless something really crazy happens in the return leg between these two teams, but even then, goal difference speaks for the Netherlands, so they will go through. Austria, on the other hand, boy, this was a gut punch. After everyone in Austria, and this is so typically Austrian, you know, either you're completely elated or you're completely down. And the truth is always very much in the middle. Yes, there were great signs against San Marino. You took this team to the sword. You scored many goals. Everyone was involved. All great stuff. And you had a great night where you celebrated a record win. And of course, Marko Arnautovic being the top goal scorer. However, Marko Arnautovic, then something with the muscle wasn't right. He could not play against Romania in Romania. And looking at the first game against Romania, we all knew this is not going to be an easy game. However, Austria should consider themselves favorite over Romania. I would also agree with that. What then followed was a dreary 0-0 game. There's no doubt about it. This game had no business of having any goals. It was, especially from Austria, really bad. They had one good shot by Sabitzer right after that. First half, they barely managed a shot on goal. And Romania absolutely, with their physicality, gave Austria troubles. This was almost to be expected, and I feared it a little bit, but I still thought that we'll get something out of it, because a draw would have been a good result. You have then a 3-point cushion over Bosnia, plus the better goal difference. So a win on Cyprus, and you are more or less sailing through. What then happened in stoppage time, and I have to say Romania had one good shot. They are two good shots, one that hit the outside of the post and one where Schlager, with the only chance on goal, actually made a good save. I think I could even say that Romania probably was closer to winning that one. There's no doubt about that. But the way you play that in stoppage time, a 0-0 is good enough. You have to know that a 0-0 is good enough. But you control then 4 minutes stoppage time. You control the ball for 2.5 minutes for them of those. Then you decide to go for the goal. You lose the ball. You make a stupid foul at midfield. There's a free kick that is poorly cleared, and then everyone is marking the space and not the man. And suddenly Posch finds himself alone against two men, and Gitcha can head it in. I mean, Linhart lost his marker, and again, the clearance was bad, the foul was bad, there was also Pras not doing it. It was not a good performance. It was not a good performance. However, what men in Austria still forget is that the situation is still rather good, and maybe losing to Romania served two purposes. A, you keep Romania in the running, and therefore they will play full on against Bosnia. Because now they even can win the group, or they are in touching distance of a second place. And Romania, yes, have the star. They have won a Nations League group, but second place will give you a better seat. So that's one thing, but it might also be a timely reminder that you have to put in the work. And yes, Austria have a trouble up front. We have great midfielders, and I think in defense we look good, but up front it's kind of meager as well. And we have seen already that teams that play physically and have also some technical quality, they can give Austria some trouble. I'm a little bit trembling at the game in Cyprus. I mean, David Alaba will be missing there, and Cyprus have been pretty good at home. They got now a win against San Marino. I mean, not too much to talk about. But yeah, that was something really weird. The other really weird thing that could come out of this group is that, and now this is the worst case scenario. Let's say Cyprus beat Austria and Romania beat Bosnia. Or even if Austria should only let's say Austria get a draw against Cyprus. So they have 16 points. Romania beat Bosnia. Then Bosnia beat Austria. Would still be alright, because 16. But then Romania have a home game against San Marino. And then if Romania run up the score with goal difference, they could make that one up. Yes, it's a huge ask, but given that Austria have beaten San Marino at home 10-0, it could be done by Romania, I guess, as well. And what adds to it is that it would be in the interest, it really would be in the interest of San Marino to have Romania in second place. Because that would remove a group winner from the playoff picture, and San Marino could swoop in there. So it's actually of interest for San Marino to lose, and lose by a lot. Maybe not enough to go for first place, but it's a weird scenario. San Marino is not out of World Cup qualifying, and it's in their interest to lose big. I think this is something that is really weird, and that should also be looked into. I think if we make now qualifying, as I suggested earlier on, based on the Nations League, I think situations like this could be avoided as well. But I actually hope that Austria get the job done against Cyprus, and then Bosnia and Romania, Bosnia does not win. That seals the deal for Austria. It's that simple. And also, interestingly enough, one win for Austria against Cyprus would not be enough to qualify by itself. If automatically, only a win against Bosnia will for sure make qualification. However, 2 draws are enough. Interesting, absolutely interesting stuff. So yeah, we'll see how this will go. Will 2 draws be enough? Yeah, it depends also on Bosnia and Romania. I think two draws will be enough, because then Romania can do what they want. Because Austria would have 17 points, and Romania can only get 16. So there you go. This is what we need to hope for at this very moment. Things are a little bit more straightforward in Group I, and yes, Norway has too low of a rating. That's why it's only 92%. I've seen others to qualify. I've seen others saying it's much higher. The models do differ. Norway is going to win this group. Italy's 3-0 at home over Israel. Yes, it was a 3-0. It was a 0-0 at the half. Then Rethinks scores a penalty. Thingy gets a second goal, and later on Mancini scores a third one. Doesn't really do much, except that Italy with that win are now secured at least of the playoff spot. But Italy don't want to go in playoff. Now you hope that Estonia will do a trick against Norway, and then you beat Norway. This is the way you can go directly to the World Cup. It's not gonna happen. Norway have been imperious, in really, really good form. I don't see anything but Norway getting a win, and then Italy is not gonna make up 16 goals or whatever, even more in their home game against Norway. Yes, it would only be an 8-0. 8-0 is not gonna happen. I do have to say, some green shoots. Gattuso seems to have some control over this Italy national team. There is some fire in there that I didn't see under Spalletti. And while Gattuso is maybe tactically not as advanced, he's really good in managing teams. And I think this is something, a very underappreciated quality of his. Probably the biggest game of the entire qualifying round happened between Wales and Belgium, because this was a true chance for Wales again hurting Belgium. Alas, it did not happen. Yes, Roden gave Wales the lead, and at this point Cardiff was roaring, and it really seemed like, yes, World Cup qualification is within grasp for Wales. However, then they give away a really stupid penalty, and there is no arguing about it. This was a penalty. Kevin De Bruyne equalizes, then Belgium had the upper hand. Meunier shortly thereafter made it 2-1. Belgium in full control there. Belgium actually showed for once their class, and I have to say their blue away jersey, which if you watch this on YouTube you can also see behind me. The blue away jersey with the white pants looked actually much better than with the brown ones, I would argue. But, it's not the Tintin look overall, so I understand why it was not issued this way. But Belgium in full control, and when then Wales given away another penalty, and again another one where you really cannot argue a whole lot. De Bruyne makes it 3-1. It was done and dusted. It was more their desperation. That then Broadhead pulled one back, gave a little bit of hope, but the people were already leaving, because Wales actually needed to get a win. Was not meant to be, because after they had it 2-3 a minute later, Trossard gets the game done, and Belgium get a pretty big win. A win that got even bigger because North Macedonia only managed a 1-1 at home to Kazakhstan, being even 1-0 down. And I have to say, after North Macedonia got the 0-0 in Belgium, you have to kick yourself that you didn't win against Kazakhstan, because those are the points dropped. Now, Belgium with a win in the next game, which is at Kazakhstan, can already seal World Cup qualification. So it is that easy for Belgium. Would have North Macedonia won, would have been a different story. And so it's between Wales and North Macedonia who will go into the playoff. Both have the star, meaning that they are Nations League group winners. So they will be in the playoff regardless. But being seeded is probably the better choice. And so There's one team already qualified, England. We already said it. And if you're watching this YouTube, I decided for that reason to wear now for this section at least an England jersey. Congratulations, England. You got it done very easy with a 5-0 at Latvia. And no one really expected anything else. Can I just say that actually this Latvia jersey with the orange in there looked quite nice. But this was always one-way traffic. Gordon breaks the deadlock. And then Harry Kane in the 44th and then in stoppage time with a penalty makes it 3-0. Then there was an own goal in there and Eze adds a fifth one. England, 6 wins, 80 goals scored, none conceded. It's all perfect if there wasn't the Bellingham issue and if there wasn't the issue with Tuchel kind of criticizing the England fans for not creating as much atmosphere. He got a little bit of stick from the England fans, yes, but I think it was all good-natured banter. It's just Tommy Tuchel. He just tries to get the edge every single way, and I think he's doing quite well for England. Another team that we already knew is more or less qualified is Croatia. They get also a relatively easy win over Gibraltar. I think it was a 3-0. So Croatia also within absolute qualifying, they have a game less than the Czechs. If they have they have now a 3-point cushion, they need one more point, they are qualified. But why do they have now a 3-point cushion over the Czechs? Because the Czechs managed to lose at the Faroe Islands. And as someone from a country that handed the Faroe Islands their first competitive win, I feel with them. But the real story are the Faroe Islands. They got 3 wins in a row. And they beat the Czechs. Took twice the lead in a 2-1 win. And the Czechs, I think the air was out of the balloon after that draw where Croatia really dominated them, and the Czechs know that they have a last game against Gibraltar. They will get it done. So maybe it didn't mean all that much, but it's still rather damning that you lose at the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands, one of the success stories coming out of the Nations League, because now they have been building something. So really, really good to see that one. It's still the Czechs will be in the playoff. They will finish in second place. Croatia will go through. I mean, it is nigh impossible. I mean, Czechia would need to run up the score and Croatia need to lose 2 games. Not gonna happen. Absolutely not. No, not gonna happen. Croatia at the World Cup, virtually, I would say. The playoff picture is also an interesting one. I'm showing you here the current ranking of the second place teams and how they would be seeded already. So if second place teams at the moment stay in place, the picture would be like here. It will go by the FIFA rating, and I already used a prediction website to kind of have the updated FIFA rating that will be published in about a week's time or something like that. But it's a formula, you can do that, and there's websites out there that do that for you. So the seeded teams currently, and I think all 4 teams are very likely to finish in second place, would be Italy, Turkey, Ukraine, and Poland. Hungary, Scotland, Czechia, and Slovakia would move into second place in the second pot. Slovakia, Northern Ireland, there is something in there. Northern Ireland being in second place would knock out Slovakia, which actually would help San Marino. Just have that in mind too. So this is one team that San Marino would not like to see in there. Same thing, I think, goes then for probably Kosovo, but Kosovo is probably a second place team. Or Bosnia is another one. If Bosnia goes in third place, they're more or less out. It will help San Marino. So weird things like that. But if it remains, and I think most of them are realistic, maybe with the exception of, I would say, whatever happens between Slovakia and Northern Ireland. But this looks almost like a good list. Albania, North Macedonia, Bosnia, and Kosovo, except for Albania, all former Yugoslav nations and all very Balkan heavy, would be in pot 3 and pot 4. And this is the pot that will get drawn against the top teams. And I have to say, there are some really big names in there. Wales, Sweden, Romania, Northern Ireland. I think we should rank, if we do a ranking, we should do it all by FIFA ranking, not put the Nations League in there. But yeah, I see another Italy-Sweden game. At least Italy will host this time, but there is some bad memories. That much is for certain. So I would say before we talk about more qualified teams, let's move over to CONCACAF. Not quite done yet and wide open in every regard. I mean, CONCACAF is probably almost the craziest region. I include Africa in that one. Suriname almost scored really big points, and they're leaning a little bit into the Dutch heritage as well, having a 1-0 lead at Panama that was equalized by Diaz in the 96th minute. So Suriname and Panama just stay in there. However, Suriname is a team that doesn't want to go away. Panama does have the great rating, that's why they have the 62% chance of qualifying and 55% of winning this group, and they have been widely considered the fourth best team in CONCACAF. But this Suriname team is really a hard one to get rid of, honestly. In Group B, Jamaica bounced back with a huge 4-0 win over Bermuda, whereas Curaçao only managed a 1-1 draw at home to Trinidad and Tobago. And I just want to point out, Curaçao is maybe a small island, but they also lean into the Dutch heritage, getting a lot of players from the Eredivisie, from the Netherlands as well. And most importantly, their coach is a known quantity, Dick Advocaat. Twice he was the Dutch manager, I think in the 90s and in the early 2000s. But he's definitely a quantity, and so I find this a rather interesting project. I actually would love if Curaçao could qualify, but Jamaica is probably also a team that we haven't seen since '98 at the World Cup. And then the Haiti story in Group C is also a little bit over. We thought that they might pull an upset, but now they got beaten rather big 3-0 by Honduras, who are now in the lead in this group. Also Costa Rica 4-1 over Nicaragua. So it's kind of the empire striking back in this group. I would think that Costa Rica should be the stronger team, but so far Honduras have the better record. So we'll see who will qualify from that group. And then we know that the two best second place teams, and at the moment this would be Curaçao ahead of Costa Rica, and Panama would be out. Crazy stuff, would go into intercontinental playoff, where neither of these teams I think will be really favored, although this will be played I think in the United States, so they might actually get some support through that. Let's continue in Asia. As expected, Qatar and Saudi Arabia have qualified. Saudi Arabia only a 0-0 at home against Iraq. They only qualify because they beat Indonesia by a higher scoreline. Not very good record, but at least they get the job done. Qatar had a 2-0 lead against the UAE before a red card, and a late goal made it a little bit more interesting. But Qatar is also through to the World Cup, so we know now all the teams, all 8 teams going from Asia. And now it's also who will go into the continental playoff. It's a playoff between the UAE and Iraq. And Iraq have the slight advantage of playing the second game at home. So it's a 2-legged tie in November, UAE against Iraq. That will be an interesting one. And according to my model, Iraq has the higher rating. I think they have been doing overall better in an Asian Cups as well. So yeah, definitely an interesting one. Again, I don't necessarily see any of these qualifying for the World Cup through the Intercontinental Playoff, but it keeps it a little bit more interesting. And now let's go to Africa. And again, group by group rundown. We know the big stories ahead were, of course, Cape Verde qualifying for the first time. We'll get to that. And then how will Group C resolve? But we'll go group by group. Group A, Egypt were already through. Burkina Faso got a 3-1 home win over Ethiopia, which meant they had a decent chance at that time of qualifying for the playoff. However, probably should have put in a few more goals. Kabore was their star. It was 2-0. Then Ethiopia pulled one back in the 96th minute, made it 3-1. Looked decent for Burkina Faso. The DRC, and this was the late slot yesterday, got their win over Sudan, meaning they actually made it into this playoff. So they're part of this African playoff for the Intercontinental spot, the last one. And Senegal got the job done with a 4-0 win over Mauritania, with Sadio Mane, Ndiaye and Diallo scoring the 4 goals. Group C though, this was where it was really at. When Nigeria knew they needed to beat Benin, and probably by a big scoreline, to actually make up a little bit of goal difference, thanks to the new rhythm that actually kept them into place, that the games against Zimbabwe, the last place team, will not count, because they dropped actually points against Zimbabwe quite some. So this actually gave Nigeria the boost. They knew that. We didn't know that because no one told us that this is this way. But they also wanted that South Africa will not win at home against Rwanda. Well, that didn't happen. South Africa already scored in the 5th minute through Mbata, the 1-0, and then Apolis and Makogopa add 2 more. And so South Africa relatively easy through and qualify for the World Cup because they knew that Nigeria is beating Benin. And Victor Osimhen opens the scoring very early on. Probably it was offside. No VAR there. And then Benin had a few chances. Benin, coached by Roara, a well-known quantity in the African game. So I think he made even some headlines with Nigeria itself. So Benin then had a few chances, and again, Nigeria were playing in white. I didn't complain about that. Austria against Romania was a white against yellow matchup, and that's the same thing here. That's not a matchup. White against yellow should not work, does not work. And why cannot Nigeria play at home in their greenish jerseys? But enough of that rant. Curiously enough, I have been wearing in this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm just telling you this as a podcast observer. I have been wearing the white England jersey for the first part, and now I'm wearing a South Africa jersey and a yellow jersey. So, I'm making some trouble there as well. But when Victor Osimhen in the 37th minute, again after a nice assist by Milan Strukwese, made it 2-0, it was clear that Nigeria will win that one. He adds a third one right after the halftime. But at that point, it was then not quite clear. Is this enough for Nigeria to make it into the playoff? They needed to make sure to at least get one more goal, and they got one more goal. I mean, the 3-0 already had taken them past Burkina Faso, but you never knew what Uganda and so on could do. The fourth goal that was then scored by Onyeka in stoppage time really made sure that Nigeria are in a really strong position. At that point, already qualified for the playoff. So while it was not the happy ending that many were hoping, that they were hoping that South Africa will drop points, but it was at least a happy ending that Nigeria will go into the playoff and are the top seed because they have the highest rating according to FIFA. So crazy stuff, maybe not the crazy ending that we were all hoping for, but still. Crazy ending though we got in Group D. Cape Verde get it done. They were so nervous in the first game. And if you look at the Tempo website, the official supplier for the Cape Verde Islands, you can see you cannot buy this blue jersey that I have back there. Seemingly you couldn't buy it either. If I were the Cape Verde, it's out of production. So they played at home in the white jersey, which means maybe should I get the white jersey? Potentially. We'll see about that. Not doing anything for now. But then in the second half, they scored the 3 goals. Wild celebrations, whatever Cameroon was doing. They got only a 0-0 draw at home to Angola, which just about saw them through. They were for a time a little bit on the bubble with that one. But, Cameroon also through to the playoff. But, have to go against Nigeria and some other really good teams. Morocco finished the qualification round pretty much perfect with a narrow 1-0 win at home. I think over Congo it was. But, due to this weird thing that now the 6th place teams outside in Niger had a chance of getting in. However, in the end, they missed out as well. Between the Côte d'Ivoire and Gabon, this was also yesterday evening for the final spot. Both teams knew that they have already the playoff spot secured, and the Côte d'Ivoire had a home game against Kenya. Kessié in the 7th minute already gave them the 1-0 lead, and from that moment on it was clear. Côte d'Ivoire back at the World Cup. Gabon got the 2-0 over Burundi. It didn't really matter much. Gabon were already in the playoff. Then moving over to Group G. It was actually important for Uganda to get a win against Algeria, and they had the 1-0 lead. However, Algeria turned it around, and so Uganda fall out of the playoff spots, and it is Algeria that win this group also with a pretty good record overall. Not much I can tell you about Group H. Namibia never had really a chance. Tunisia win that one easily, and then Group I, Ghana also got the job done. They were virtually qualified already. Madagascar never really having a good shot. I mean, they would have needed a win at Mali to get it done, but Mali beat them 4-1. Mali didn't really matter to them. Ghana got the job done with a 1-0 over Comoros. Only 1-0, but didn't really matter. Kudus scored the goal. So, with all the African groups done, let's look at the playoff picture. We see that the 4 qualified teams are Gabon, DRC, Cameroon, and Nigeria. Those are the 4 best second place teams. Once you remove the 6th place teams, if there was a group of 6 in the case, so Niger was the only team that did not have a drop. The result, Nigeria just about make it. There were plenty of teams with 15, so this big win for Nigeria was vital that they stay in. Now, as for the seeding, it goes by the FIFA rating, and the highest ranked or rated team is Nigeria, ahead of Cameroon, ahead of the DRC and Gabon. So completely flipped. So it will be Nigeria who will host Gabon in the first semi-final. They are, of course, the favorites there. And then Cameroon kind of level against the DRC. However, Cameroon will also have a home game. So it looks like a Nigeria against Cameroon matchup. That is something that I'm very keen on, to be honest. I don't really know much. Will this be played on neutral ground? I think I saw it will be played in Morocco or whatever, because they will also host the AFCON. Would make some sense to have that one, but we'll see. I hate that we don't get as much information out of Africa. With UEFA, it will already be laid out already. In Africa, things are a little bit more wilder. But that's also why I love Africa in many ways. So, for the next November break, we have this in about a month's time. We, of course, have finishing group stages in Europe. We pretty much know who will qualify. The question will be Germany, Denmark, Scotland, all these kind of groups. Maybe even the Austria group. But, I'm probably more nervous than I should be in that one. So we have that sorted. We have, of course, the playoffs in Africa and in Asia. We will finish CONCACAF qualifying. So we'll be the same for regions that we had now, because no one is playing in South America, and OFC qualification is already done there as well. This will also be then the point in time where we can talk a little bit more about the intercontinental playoff, how this one will work out. And we, of course, have to talk about seeding for the World Cup draw, which will happen very soon. And again, we'll have a draw where plenty of teams are yet to be decided who will go in. And we also have then a draw for the playoff path for Europe. Also interesting, because that could be very vital for many teams, especially if I look at Italy, the team that I care about most in these. Yeah, after Austria, but I assume Austria will qualify. So yeah, will definitely be interesting overall. In any case, it was again a wild ride. I have to say, the European games, I can see a point that those were not as exciting, but every evening I could find myself a game that I could get invested in. And I have to say, the Belgium-Wales game made up for a lot. Yes, Austria-Romania, I knew, or Romania-Austria was an important game. And then I could also really get invested into Portugal against Hungary, because I knew will not be the easiest game, but I could see a team qualify. For instance, Latvia-England, that didn't interest me too much. But you can always find yourself some games. But if you have to pick and choose, and then you're stuck like I was at one point with Sweden-Switzerland, yeah, great rivalry. And it was actually a pretty good game. But I know it doesn't make the international headlines. So maybe we'll get a better system there. Also for the Euros to qualify, because half of the teams qualify. On the other side, I think in the other confederations, it's exciting. I mean, CONCACAF is wide open. Africa was really, up until the end, there was high stakes, and there were high stakes thanks to the playoff as well. So I don't see really a problem there. I wish that Asian qualifying was not as complicated as it currently is. But those are just some final thoughts. Please drop me your thoughts below. What did you enjoy best during this international break? Now club football will have us back for another 4 weeks, and some pretty big games in there too. So looking forward to that already. I actually have decided that probably since I make a Spotify and a YouTube version of this podcast, I might actually go for the weekend reviews just purely audio and not have video, because the video then takes a lot of time as well for me to prepare. So, but we'll see how it will work out. I will definitely keep it for Champions League and for World Cup qualifying, that there's a video portion where I actually can see my collection as well. Just a thought for now. Let me know how you think about all that, and if you just consume it on an audio, it will not matter to you anyway. In any case, please let me know what you thought about World Cup qualifying. Who do you think actually will win the World Cup? This was also a discussion that we didn't get into it. Please drop a line below and let me know about that. Also, anything that you can do to support this channel. What is this? You can leave a nice review, for instance, on your YouTube platform. You can give me a subscription on YouTube, and most importantly, tell others, because more people listening to this podcast will lift it, and actually that would be fun to do. In any case, however that will be, one thing is for certain, I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!